and welcome to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. My name is Jesse, and I'm going to be your host. So today's episode is going to be about a wonderful, beautiful movie that I have loved for years and years, and that is 1999's Jawbreaker. So this movie was written and directed by Darren Stein, who is out gay filmmaker. He had one movie before this called Sparkler, that was starring Freddie Prinze Jr. and Jamie Kennedy. Don't really know where you can find that to watch unless you find a VHS of it or something like that, but that actually pretty much helped him get to make Jawbreaker. This idea of the story in particular comes from Darren Stein's real life, I guess. He grew up in the valley of Los Angeles, California, I guess. And he knew these girls who would kidnap each other on their birthdays. And he just thought, well, what would happen if one of those pranks went wrong, And he initially wanted to make it a horror movie, but as he was writing it, he realized it was more of kind of a dark comedy. And so that's where we get the dark comedy aspect of this movie. A little information about the film itself. So this film was released January 30th of 1999 at Sundance, where I think also two of the stars, Rose McGowan and Rebecca Gayheart, they actually went and did the Sundance circuit, which was cool. And then it was released February 19th, 1999. I believe it was only in theaters for 3 weeks or so, and then it was pulled. The budget of this movie fluctuates between either $3 million or $3.5 million. I've seen both figures out there online. Darren Stein himself said that this was a $3 million movie, which was way less than the other teen movies around this time were getting. But he was still able to make something of it, And then the box office was $3.1 million. So, it either didn't make its money back quite, or it might have made a little bit of its money back, but not really a whole lot in terms of just box office. But this movie did find a audience in, home video release. That's definitely how I watched it when I was a kid, pretty much. The front cover of this, VHS that I probably watched was super colorful, and it had Rose McGowan, Julie Benz, and Rebecca Gayheart on the front of it, and it just looked really colorful. And why not watch something that seems bright and colorful? For a Rotten Tomatoes score, we're looking at a 14% on the tomato meter, and then a 55% audience score. We're also looking at a IMDb score of 5.6 out of 10, and then a Letterboxd score of 3.3 out of 5. I also thought it would be kind of fun to look at some critical response quotes about this movie at the time. So I have 3 of them that I pulled, these log lines for it. Gary Brown from the Houston Community Newspapers stated, "I'd just as soon have my jaw broken than to sit through this one again." So that's fun. Got Owen Gleiberman from Entertainment Weekly, who I think was the chief critic for movies and TV at that time. He states, "A synthetic yet shrill sadomasochistic cartoon," which, I mean, he's not wrong about it. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but definitely not wrong. And then our one and only Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times, and also from At the Movies on television at the time, stated, "A slick production of a lame script." So that's fun. This movie was pretty much shot in all around Los Angeles, it seems like. And it was shot in 30 days with 6-day weeks for some of the actresses at the time, which sounds like a lot, especially when you're on set for hours and hours a day. That can be quite a bit. But yeah, and this also was not supposed to be, I think, theatrically released. It was actually supposed to be initially a home video release, which is probably how the project got greenlit for the weird, idea that it was. And for some reason, it just got fast-tracked to be put into theaters, and it was able to get into theaters for a little bit. There wasn't too much marketing of this movie, it seemed like, either. I think they might have gotten, like, again, they had, like, two of the actresses go to Sundance and do that circuit. I think they had a movie special on MTV that had some of the actresses on it as well with one of the VJs, which I think you can find on YouTube, actually. I don't remember what the name of it was, but it was like No Candy Ass or something like that. And it's like a special for Jawbreaker that has like the main actresses in it, which I think is really interesting. But let's get started with our plot summary. I just watched this film not too long ago and have a little bit of a summary. So I got some bullet points here to talk about the film. And then throughout, I'll also be talking about some fun tidbits after each bullet point, that can be kind of fun to talk about. So we open on this hallway scene. We have these four girls who are the Flawless Four. And then you see in the middle of them a girl by the name of Fern Mayo, played by Judy Greer. She's walking down the hallway as the Flawless Four are walking down the hallway, and she drops her books and her papers. So the Flawless Four consists of Courtney Shane, who is played by Rose McGowan. At that time was known for being in the Doom Generation and Scream. You have Julie Benz, playing Marcy Fox, known to herself as Foxy. She had probably been most well known for being on Buffy at the time. She was actually the first person who was ever on Buffy on the first episode. She played one of the vampires. And then I believe it was Rebecca Gayheart playing Julie Freeman. At this time, she would have been most well known for being in Urban Legend, even though I'm pretty sure that Urban Legend actually shot after Jawbreaker did. I think Jawbreaker was done in the spring of 1998, and then like in April of 1998 or something like that, that's when they started shooting Urban Legend. Oh, don't worry, I'm going to make an episode of that one too. But, and then you have Liz Purr, played by Charlotte Ayana, who, fun fact, actually was Miss Teen USA 1994. So it's kind of funny that, like, she decided to take on a bit of an acting career after her win. And she was in The Rage Carrie 2. She played a character in there. But this is probably one of her most well-known roles, playing Liz Purr, a girl who doesn't really even speak. So, anyway, you have these girls walking down the hallway, and you get a little bit of an idea of each of them. And then you pan over to Liz's house, and you see her sleeping in her room, and the voiceover is talking about, how Liz Purr was special. She was beautiful, rich, popular, smart, and she was like the Princess Di of Reagan High. And that really pissed Courtney off. And that she was just so perfect, and it's just a shame about what happened to her. And then you go into a kidnapping scene where you see three masked assailants. One puts a Jawbreaker into her mouth, and then the others tie her up, put her in the back trunk of a car, and then drive away. And you find out that these are actually her friends, Courtney, Marcy, and Julie, playing a prank on her birthday. So they're taking her to a diner where they're going to stuff her pretty face with pancakes and then tie her to the flagpole in her bra and undies and watch the fun begin. Sounds like great friends to me. And they take her to this diner, and they pop the trunk open while Courtney's about to take a Polaroid, and they realize that Liz is absolutely dead as a doornail. And so then Courtney's all like, oh, I didn't want her to scream. I thought a Jawbreaker would be funny to gag her with. And then Julie's all like, you gagged her with a Jawbreaker? Like, what? And you have the title sequence coming up, and it's showing you how supposedly Jawbreakers are made. And it's going through all the cast and the crew and everything. And then it comes back to the girls driving to school. You see Marcy's just like crying. Julie's freaked out. And then Courtney's just driving the car. And they decide before they go to school, they have to call in sick for Liz. So Courtney then calls in sick for Liz, putting on the most like drag queen voice ever. Miss Sherwood, please. Yes, hi, Miss Sherwood. This is Miss Purr, Elizabeth's mother. Yes, I'm sorry, but Elizabeth won't be at school today. It's so weird. But anyway, so you have the call-in sick. It buys them at least a day or two. And then after they call in sick for her, they then arrive at school. And then once they arrive at school, you know, they have a little pep talk, you know, okay, Liz is in the trunk of this car and she's dead. That is sad and fucked up, but you're going to walk in there and strut your shit like everything's peachy fucking keen. Get it? You know, that kind of thing. And then you have the iconic walk scene down the hallway that has been recreated in other TV shows and films and parodied and everything. But that's the kind of the first bit of the movie. During this time, so the opening hallway scene, the first one, was shot, and a lot of these interior school shots were actually shot at University High School in Los Angeles. This school was used for different movies and TV shows. I think some of the exterior shots of the school were used for the TV show Even Stevens, and then also Lizzie McGuire as well, for some reason. Any early 2000s music fans may also recognize this as the school in the music video for Leave, Get Out by JoJo, which I think is kind of funny because then JoJo would end up being in one of Darren Stein's next directorial works, which was GBF. She plays one of the characters at that school, so I thought that was kind of funny. And this opening scene with the voiceover from Fern and everything was actually added in. The initial scene was just the kidnapping scene in the initial beginning, and test audiences thought it was too startling, it was too intense, and I actually agree with them. I think it's better this way, where you get to learn a little bit about the girls. You learn about Liz, because she doesn't speak or anything. She's not really a talking character or anything. So you get to know about her and how great she was, apparently. And, you know, it's all the more sad when she passes away. Liz's house in particular is located in Hancock Park. It's an actual house that was being lived in at the time of shooting. So I think the tenants just like let Darren Stein use the house for a month and moved out of there for a bit and then came back. And then also, I have the 20th anniversary Blu-ray of this movie that has a director and cast commentary on it. And it had Judy Greer, Rebecca Gayheart, and Julie Benz and Darren Stein all together talking. Rose McGowan was unfortunately unavailable. She was in New York while they were in LA. But Judy Greer, at the time of that recording, said that she lives near that house, and she walks her dog near it every now and then. And so it's kind of fun when she can like look at the house and be like, oh, that's the house we shot Jawbreaker at. And then Rebecca Gayheart also mentions that she drives by that house as well, which is kind of funny when you're living in a place like LA and you can just like see places where you've probably like done a movie or something or a TV show, especially if you shoot on location somewhere. Judy Greer also mentioned that this movie was actually her first job in LA, which was kind of cool. I mean, before this, she had only really been in like a low budget horror movie with werewolves called Stricken. And then the other movie she was in was Kissing a Fool, which is currently on Stars right now if you want to watch it. I don't think it's really that good. But Judy Greer's in it. She plays, it has David Schwimmer, Jason Lee, and Millie Avital as like the lead characters. And Judy Greer plays Millie Avital's sister in this movie. And it's weird because you see that, like, actually Judy Greer was rocking blonde hair, which in this movie, Jawbreaker, she actually has a wig on. So, like, she has this brunette hair that makes her look all mousy, like she's supposed to be. But, yeah, I thought that was kind of fun. But she talked about how that was her first job in LA. And how, yeah, she got this really kind of last minute, which was crazy. Let's see what else. You'll notice that in the title sequence, Julie Benz has long hair, and you'll also notice in the movie that she has short hair in the actual movie. She wasn't exactly happy about getting her hair cut like that, and I think one of the reasons she wasn't very happy about that was because it actually happened. She got her hair cut 6 weeks before her first marriage, so that's got to be awkward. Fun fact, if you didn't know this, but Julie Benz's first husband is a gentleman by the name of John Kassir. And if you don't know who John Kassir is, well, he's mainly known as the sole voice of the Crypt Keeper from the Tales from the Crypt series. So he did the television show on HBO. He did both the movies that came out. He did the children's show that came out, Tales from the Crypt Keeper, all that kind of stuff. He's like the official voice. He was also the voice of Deadpool back in the 90s before Deadpool had his own movie. And yeah, he was also on the Amanda Show as one of the adult actors, if anybody watched that, like I did. And yeah, they were married for a couple years and they got divorced. But, it's kind of funny that, like, he was with someone like Julie Benz, you just don't think about that, I guess. And also he's kind of a hometown hero because he's from Baltimore in particular. So that's cool. He went to Towson University apparently. So it's always nice to see some local people. The location that they drive to in the beginning, where they find Liz's body in the trunk, is a local LA diner. It was called Johnny's Broiler. I think it's still pretty much there. I think it just got renovated. This location was used in other movies. It had been used in Can't Hardly Wait, which I believe was also released by the same studio that Jawbreaker got released from. And it was sort of a rival of them. So Can't Hardly Wait, it was used in that. And it was also used in Reality Bites from 1994 with Winona Ryder and Ethan Hawke. In the movie, there's a scene where Winona Ryder and Janine Garofalo, they go to a diner, and the diner is Johnny's Broiler. So that's kind of fun. You'll notice throughout the movie that Julie Benz, Marcy, is wearing a necklace that says Foxy. And actually that Foxy necklace was... Julie Benz was allergic to it. And so they actually had to put clear nail polish on it so she wouldn't get a rash. That's kind of fun. So the fun of, being on a movie set. The title sequence is actually not how Jawbreakers are made. If you want to know how Jawbreakers are made, there's a fun YouTube video that tells you all about it. But really, the production team just found props in local LA shops around the town and just set them up in a studio that could show what a Jawbreaker, like how a Jawbreaker could be made. But this is not actually how Jawbreakers are made. The initial scene in the car after the title sequence was actually the audition scene for these roles. So these three actresses probably used this as their audition to talk about. So that was kind of crazy. And you'll notice throughout the movie that there is a circular shape motif going on to kind of indicate Jawbreakers. So you'll notice, like, the girls wear hoop earrings a lot. You might notice in their clothes they have, like, different, like, circular patterns. You'll also notice in other parts of production design, you'll see spheres, globes type of thing going on. And you'll see that, and it's kind of a nice little touch that they had. We'll get to the fashions of this movie too. They're amazing. The costumes of this movie were done by Vicki Brinkford, who's now Vicki Barrett, and she actually was a costumer on Clueless and Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion with Mona May. And again, like I said, you see that motif of bright and colorful in the fashions of this movie, which I think is just so great. It takes 1950s fashion a little bit, kind of turns it on its head and brings it into this like 90s world. But I absolutely love the fashions of this movie. When Courtney and the gang come up to the school, I think it's funny that on her parking brake it has her literal name. I just think it's so funny. It's a little thing that you can miss really quickly, but I think it's really funny. And the other fun kind of thing was that during that hallway walk scene, it was either Julie Benz didn't know how to walk in heels, or the heels that she got in particular were just really squeaky. But pretty much any time that they did that hallway walk scene, her shoes would actually just squeak. Which is just really awkward when you're having to do it take after take, probably, but I just think that's kind of funny that, like, when you think about it, you see this iconic hallway scene, and just know that one of the actresses' shoes were just so loud and squeaky. So that's just really funny to me. Also, a fun fact about crew on this movie. So the director of photography for this movie was Amy Vincent, who has since gone on and done other work as well. But before this movie, she actually did a movie called Eve's Bayou from 1997. If you have not seen Eve's Bayou, please go see it. It was on Paramount Plus for a minute, and I'm trying to see. Let me make sure I know where it's at, so that I can tell you real quick, because I think that is such a good movie. It is about a black family in Louisiana in the 60s. You have Samuel L. Jackson, Lynn Whitfield, Journey Smollett, Megan Good. Like, oh, it's such a good movie. It's Southern Gothic family drama with some voodoo in there a little bit. It's just so good. Currently, right now, as of the recording, it is on Tubi, but it's going to be leaving Tubi at some point soon, maybe near the end of the month or something, so please go watch it. But even pull up and, like, just get it on, rent it or something. Like, I think it's totally worth it. But anyway, so that is what Amy Vincent had done before this movie, which is kind of cool. I didn't know that until, I listened to the commentary, and I was like, oh, shoot, that's kind of cool. So there's that. All right, let's go back to the plot summary that I got going on. So the girls go into the bathroom when they get to school, and you are introduced to Fern a little bit more as a character. You see that her and Julie may have known each other before because Courtney and Marcy don't even know what her name is. So, but Julie knows what her name is, which is kind of cool. So you're like, oh, they must have known each other. And then you see Miss Sherwood coming in. Miss Sherwood is played by Carol Kane from When a Stranger Calls, The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Wicked on Broadway, all that. And she plays the principal. She plays the vice principal or assistant principal, I believe, in this movie. I'm just saying, I think it would have been great to have a principal played by, like, a fun cameo. I would have totally been into having, like, Barry Bostwick or somebody play the principal. That would have been so funny to me, but that's my own little thing. Anyway, so Miss Sherwood's in the bathroom with the girls, being like, no loitering in the girls' room, trouble brews in the girls' room. And she's talking about, like, hey, not so fast. Like, Liz is out sick today. Like, can one of you come by and get her assignments? And, she kind of volunteers Courtney to come get them. And so then, they leave the bathroom and they go on about their day. So each girl is in a different class, and you see little scenes within their classes. So Julie is in English class where her teacher's talking about guilt and Shakespeare and all, and that's a whole scene. Has Tatiana Ali in there. She plays she plays Brenda. Her name's Brenda. She's one of the cheerleaders from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Then you have anatomy class with Rose McGowan with Courtney. Her boyfriend, Dane, played by Ethan Erickson. We'll get to him in a little bit, too. But the teacher's talking about how the female anatomy at one time was, being done. They're talking about the female anatomy or something like that in there, and how autopsies had been done in previous years and things. It's kind of a weird thing. And then Dane waggles his tongue at Courtney, and she's just like, ew. And then home ec class, good old home ec class, with Julie, not with Julie, with Marcy. And she's just, like, trying to crack an egg into a little bowl, and then that egg is a stillborn, and it's all bloody. And, of course, the goth girl, who I'm obsessed with, played by Anne Russo, but at the time, Anne Zupa was her name. She just says, cool, you've got a stillborn, and puts her nail in it like a weirdo. But anyway, so you then see these girls eating outside on the bleachers, and they're just like, hanging out, and Courtney's like, we can just put her back in bed. And they're like, we can't, Julie's like, we can't just put her back in bed, and it's because she has a Jawbreaker stuck in her throat. Like, how can we do that? So Courtney's all thinking, like, oh, okay, maybe we can do, like, she was up late, sucking on a Jawbreaker. And then Marcy kind of insinuates that, like, maybe she was practicing, and swallowed, And that gives Courtney the idea of, like, wait, they'll check to see if she was assaulted, pretty much, right? Like, they'll check to see if she was raped. And this gives her this idea of, like, people will believe that this perfect girl was just obliterated by perversion, and some of these lines are just so grandiose, and I think that's what really helps this movie be just like a weird camp movie, because people don't talk like this, people don't dress like this, and that's totally fine, but you have a little bit of that, and so that's another little part that I got going on with here. I'm trying to see if there's any other fun facts that I can think of. So Carol Kane, when she is in the bathroom with the girls, she has a line where Courtney's wearing it's like bustier with like a little cover all on top of it, and Carol Kane is like, please cover your bosoms, Miss Shane. This is a learning institution, not a brothel. And then she's just like, do it yourself. Like, and pretty much, but she actually improvised the do it yourself line, which I thought was really funny. In the Julie classroom scene, you'll notice that the lighting in there, it's actually inspired by like film noir a little bit, because I do see a little bit of like film noir in this movie. Even like the beginning scene where they discover the body is supposed to be kind of like a nod to gangster movies of like the 30s and 40s. And so, and even I think Rose McGowan like literally based her character of Courtney off a movie from back in the 30s or 40s with Gene Tierney called Far From Heaven or something like that, where this woman plays a sociopath pretty much, and pretty much Courtney Shane's a sociopath, I guess, but it makes sense. And actually, Darren Stein had stated on the commentary track that Rose McGowan said that she did want to actually play 3 roles where she could do Courtney, Fern, and Violet all together. But that might have been a joke just because, like, the actress who initially was supposed to play Fern, Violet, was, she had to drop out or quit or whatever. So Judy Greer was a last-minute kind of addition. And it's kind of crazy how she got it. She literally was in LA for a couple days. And she was doing pilot season, got this emergency page on her beeper when she was like in line at the airport going to her friend's house. And she went to this casting agency. They literally they told her like, hey, we're going to cast you. And she was just like, okay, I guess. So it's kind of crazy how that worked. Also, Rachel Lee Cook was considered and actually pretty much almost cast as Julie, but they instead decided to go with Rebecca Gayheart, probably because they had Rachel Lee Cook read with Rose and Julie Benz, and I don't think it really worked. The chemistry just didn't really work. But also, when you look at Rachel Lee Cook, at that time at least, she looked like a teenage high school student, whereas these other girls looked like they were in their 20s, which was kind of a little bit of the part of this movie, is that you see these kind of little homages to Carrie and Grease throughout. And I think this movie also has like these 20-somethings playing teenagers, so definitely there's that. Anyway, back to our plot summary. So Fern then comes to Miss Sherwood's office and she asks, hey, are you going to be chaperoning this annual party that the Botany Club has? And Miss Sherwood's like, I wouldn't miss for the world. And Miss Sherwood actually asks Fern, like, hey, do you know Elizabeth Purr? And Fern's all like, you mean meow? Liz is the cat's meow. And you start getting a little bit of like, okay, I guess she knows her. And anyway, Miss Sherwood asks her, hey, can you maybe take these assignments to her? Because I had, Courtney Shane was supposed to do it, but she's late. And Fern jumps at the chance. She's just like, hell yeah, well, even without getting the address. But at some reason, she knows where she lives, I guess. Anyway, so then you see the 3 girls. You see the, whatever their name is now. But like, you see the 3 girls, coming to Miss Sherwood's car as she's leaving, and they're like, hey, I forgot to get Liz's homework, but I'm getting it now. And then she's all like, oh, yeah, you were tardy, but, thankfully Fern Mayo came by my office, and, it got the assignment. She's on her way now. And they're like, oh, no, we have to get there before Mayo does. You know what I mean? So then they drive back to Liz's house. They take her in to her room and drop her off in the bed. And they're putting her back in bed, and Marcy and Courtney are just, like, trying to rekajigger her pretty much to, like, make it seem like she was maybe assaulted or whatever. And you could just tell that, like, Julie is not into any of this, and she's just, like, she's sitting at her friend's vanity. She ends up finding a greeting card from the last year's prank, and it had her voice on it, which was weird, which that greeting card will come back into play. But you start to see that, Julie's just not really into any of this. Marcy, like, turns Liz's head and she screams because her eyes are open and they're looking at her. And so that kind of is the catalyst for Fern to investigate a little bit further, because she ended up coming to the door. She's rehearsing this, like, little monologue she has for Liz. But then she starts to investigate, like, okay, well, what's going on here? And then Fern investigates upstairs. Then you kind of see these three girls just, like, kind of fighting with each other. And Julie's like, I can't do this. I just can't do this. You can't just say someone was raped because they're in their bed with their legs spread, you know? Like, it's just so weird. And then Julie's about to leave, and you see that Fern has been outside the door the whole time as she, you know, as this was all going down. And so then pretty much they confront Fern. Courtney is like, what did you hear? You know, tell us what you heard. And then Fern actually sees the body of Liz, and they, you know, she runs outside. She's like all shaken up. And then Courtney kind of thinks of this idea of like, hey, you know, fate has decided that you'll be cool and become one of us, like take her place, you know? And it's really gross and disgusting, actually. And Julie's totally not into this idea at all. And then you pretty much see after that, you know, Fern going into this new person. She's now blonde. She's wearing different clothes. You will learn that her name is now Violet, or that's what she's going by now. And it's kind of this weird, just like, I don't know, it's this weird scene, this little transformation scene going on, which I think is like so cool, actually. And then once that happens, Liz's parents actually come home. Her parents are played by PJ Soles and William Catt of the movie Carrie's fame. Norma was PJ Soles, and then William Catt played Tommy Ross, the ill-fated prom date to Carrie. And then they come home and they find their daughter in bed, dead. So a couple things about this part of the movie. So let me just see. I'm looking on my phone real quick. You'll notice that throughout this film, as I stated, there's a motif of circular, shapes. But also you'll notice in Miss Sherwood's office, there's a motif of butterflies throughout her office. And like she has a fern on one of her back tables in her office. And Darren Stein actually stated that like they wanted to make it feel as if maybe Miss Sherwood was Fern in high school, which is why she kind of had this kinship with Fern a little bit, you know, and just really enjoyed her and loved her, I guess, you know, because she feels empathy for Fern being that kind of mousy girl, even though Miss Sherwood ended up becoming the assistant principal of a high school, you know, but yeah, just knowing that there's that. Throughout the movie, you do see that Courtney has a shoulder tattoo, and this was actually a real tattoo that Rose McGowan had. They didn't remove it. They tried putting makeup on it, and they tried doing CGI on it, I guess, apparently, and it just didn't work to cover it. So this was a real tattoo that Rose had. She has since had it removed, actually. But they thought it would also just give her an edge, too, of like, of course Courtney Shane is like the devil. Like, of course she'd have like a tattoo on her shoulder, right? I think also the Fern Violet transformation I was talking about was actually inspired by Frankenstein, which completely, totally, utterly, I get that. Tim Burton, like a Tim Burton movie, I got Edward Scissorhand vibes from it a little bit, but there's inspired by that. And then also just like kind of an interlude to a musical. Like it does seem like kind of like an interlude you would just see in a musical somewhere, you know? It just has that theatrics that I think is really interesting. Let's see. Courtney's purple outfit that you see, so when you see Marcy, Courtney, and Violet walking down the hallway, her purple outfit was actually inspired by Grease, and it was also in the lunchroom scene that's coming up soon. And then Liz's parents, when they discover her body, it's like a really quick shot, but this whole scene of the body being discovered was actually inspired by like a David Lynch kind of film, you know, which I could totally see this being put into like something like Mulholland Drive, or even like, I don't know, like even one of her earlier works, like I could see this being in like a Blue Velvet type movie or whatever. I just thought that was really interesting. And then, as I stated before, Liz Purr in reality was actually played by a real teen beauty queen, which is just funny because she is a teen beauty. So then you have the lunchroom where, you know, Violet has her debut and she gets her name. You see that Julie is not really in the friend group anymore. And you get to learn a little bit about the group from Courtney of like, hey, we don't eat in public at school because we don't want people judging us. And now your name is going to be Violet because, you know, I thought fern, you know, fern's a plant, but I'd rather be a flower. I don't know about you, but I'd rather be a flower. Rose is too obvious, which is funny because her name's Rose. But, you know, she was like, we're going to make you Violet. That's what we're going to do. And then you have the introduction of Vera Cruz, played by Pam Grier, who is very famously known as Foxy Brown, Coffee, was in a bunch of blaxploitation films, is just an all-around awesome chick. And so you learn about her a little bit, and she comes to see Miss Sherwood, and talks about like, hey, I need some details about your student, that went here named Liz Purr. So there's that. And then you have another scene after this where Julie is waiting for the bus, and Zach, this guy Zach, comes up and is like, hey, Julie, what's going on? Where are your friends? You know, because he just sees her as like, oh yeah, she's in that friend group. But she's just like, I don't really want to talk about it, Zach. And so then he offers her a ride back to her home. So he takes her home, and then at home, Julie is looking through old photos that she has. And one of the old photos she comes across is like a class photo from elementary school, where I guess her and Fern went to the same elementary school. So she calls Fern on the phone using, you know, the operator. And you see Fern, you know, Violet answers the phone, and they're just talking about, you know, hey, Fern, do you remember 4th grade and how we used to have sleepovers and all this kind of stuff? And, you know, just talking about reminiscing about the past and talking about, like, it's just weird how time erases things. And then Violet's all like, oh, time doesn't erase things, people erase things. And then Julie's like, yeah, sometimes people erase people. And then you see Courtney then calls Fern, and then Julie's just, like, on call waiting at this point, and then she realizes that she's not going to talk to Fern again until like near the end of the movie. So that's how that pretty much ends. So a little bit about this this part of the movie. The lunchroom scenes in particular, only these lunchroom scenes were shot at a different high school. That and the prom scene we'll get to as well. But these lunchroom scenes were actually shot at Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks, California. And famous alumni of that school include Rami Malek from Bohemian Rhapsody and just general movie and TV. Kirsten Dunst, my Lord and Savior, from everything from Bring It On, Interview with the Vampire, Drop Dead Gorgeous, everything. And also Michelle Trachtenberg, Harriet the Spy herself, and also from Buffy and, you know, Mysterious Skin and all that. So that's kind of fun. And there was actually supposed to be like a different kind of lunchroom scene. It was supposed to be outdoors. It was going to be like in an Acropolis kind of setting. But I think because of budgetary restrictions, they couldn't really do that. But that was the plan, at least. They did want to do that. And actually, if you notice, like, where the girls are sitting is actually on a platform. So they are a little bit higher up, quote unquote, than everybody else. And you'll notice in Julie's bedroom scenes and the pool scene that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, I was actually shot at a house on Mulholland Drive. The exterior of her home that Zach drops her off at is actually shot in Santa Monica. It's just like a house in Santa Monica. And in Julie's room, you'll notice that there's a colorful glass design on her window behind her. So the same person who did that design actually did the mobile in Liz's room in the beginning, where you see this beautiful mobile. It was the same glass, you know, blower or whatever. So I thought that was kind of cool. So then you have one of the most iconic scenes ever is, I call it Dick Stick scene. So you see Dane, again played by Ethan Erickson, who is pretty much with Courtney, and Courtney brings a big stick, which is a real popsicle, and she talks about, like, you know, I could do with a little kink. I want you to suck my big stick. And she, like, has him, like, deep throat this, like, popsicle and, like, suck on it while, like, she's going down on him. It's so beautiful and subversive. Like, it's great. I love it so much. But then they're interrupted by a knock at the door. The knock at the door is the police coming to see Courtney. So there's the big stick scene. It's very iconic. I'll talk about it in a minute. You then see a scene with Marcy and her father. Her father's played by Jeff Conaway, rest in peace. He was from the movie version of Grease. He played Kaniki, but he was also in the original Broadway version of Grease. He actually played different roles in there. He, I think, even played Danny a few times, which was kind of cool. Because this movie is so based off of, it's so, not based off of, but it is so inspired by Grease. So there's that. And it's just her dad talking about, like, you know, I was watching Oprah today, and do you know what the topic was? Let me guess. Club kids? And it was her dad just talking about, like, you know, you sound like a follower, you sound uneducated, you know, and where did my little girl go, you know? And then they're interrupted, his beautiful musical rendition of I Think We're Alone Now. Which I'll talk about in just a minute, but is interrupted by a knock at the door where Marcy's just like, thank God I get to leave the table from this dinner. And then the next scene I have is the Julie and Liz pool scene. So you see Julie goes out to this pool and she sees her friend Liz swimming in the pool and coming up in the pool, and it's like this steaming heated pool kind of thing, and she's in this like Athenian like dress. It's like really beautiful. It's a really beautiful shot. And it's just like her looking at this being like, it's like a weird dream that she's had, I guess. But you know, it's a really striking scene for sure. And then Julie's mom actually comes out and hugs and kisses her, because what you find out is that, everyone's starting to find out that Liz is like dead, like she was actually dead. And so now the police are coming to each of their houses and all that. So some fun facts about this part of the movie was that the big stick scene was definitely an homage to teen movies of the 80s, specifically something like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which is one of my favorite movies. It was definitely to satisfy any gays that were watching the film. And even just Darren himself, like, he was just like, I never saw anything like this in any of the teen movies I grew up with, so I thought, why not just throw it in there? You know, just pervert the youth of America at this point. But if you've seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High, you know what scene that is. It's the beginning where Phoebe Cates teaches Jennifer Jason Leigh how to give head to a carrot. So Darren has also stated that this movie ended up finding an audience of girls, goths, and gays, which I completely believe and agree with. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a girl and I'm not really a goth necessarily, but I can understand gays for sure. Then we move on to the interrogation scene. So you have this interrogation scene with Vera Cruz. And this was her just asking, like, you know, did you call in sick for Liz? You know, who was she banging? Have you ever seen a Jawbreaker? You know? And, you know, talking about, like, how the name says it all. It'll just break your jaw. And, you know, pretty fucked up name for a candy, isn't it? So then you have this other scene. It's the frozen hallway scene where Rebecca Gayheart is walking down the hallway, and you hear or you see that all of these people are just frozen. And it's like so beautiful. It's almost like kind of like from a musical, if you will, you know. It's a very beautiful tableau. It's that and the Liz in the pool scene. I think it's a really beautiful, just like photo that could be put up in your house or something, you know. It's very striking. Amy Vincent did that, I'm telling you. But anyway, so frozen hallway scene. So it's kind of showing that, like, everything is just so, like, numb, you know. And then you see Miss Sherwood and Miss Vera Cruz talking about, like, you know, I can't believe, like, this happened and all. So you see a little scene with them where Vera talks about, like, some of the sweetest candies are as sour as death inside or something like that. But then you start to see that people are noticing who Fern is. So you're starting to see that, like, you know, the cheerleaders are noticing who she is and other people are noticing who she is. We heard that you were the last person to see Liz Per alive. That is so cool, you know, and just weird stuff like that. You also see the three girls walking through the hallway, and they decide to sign Violet up for the school play. And this is where Violet first says to Julie, like, my name is Violet. And Julie's just like, what the hell? Like, what? And then they have the iconic line of learn it, live it, love it, which I just think is so silly and wonderful. So a little bit about these parts. I'm trying to see if there's any fun facts that I put down. So Pam Grier was only on set shooting for like a day or two. So she did all her scenes at the same time. And she seemed like a perfectly nice person. She just was busy, you know, so it's not like she was chit-chatting a whole lot, but, you know, that's what you have when you get Pam Grier for a couple days. And then actually Carol Kane did a favor for Darren Stein and participated in a reading that he did for a musical that was going to happen, like a musical adaptation of Jawbreaker. And apparently in that musical, Miss Sherwood and Vera Cruz are actually the same character, they're the same person. So I thought that was kind of interesting about that as well. You also learn that Zach's last name is Tartak, I guess. So then you have the scene with Julie and Zach in the auditorium. Zach is played by Chad Christ, who actually played a young Ethan Hawke in Gattaca. Hasn't really done a whole lot since this, but again, you know, he was cool for what he did. So Zach is talking to Julie about, like, you just seemed so unapproachable before. I just thought it was so crazy when you were, like, waiting outside for the bus. And Julie's just talking about, like, well, Liz is the only thing that actually meant anything to me. With the other girls, like, it was really just all games. It was bullshit. So then Zach and Julie, they start to kind of get together. They go to a drive-in where Zach apparently goes to, like, clear his thoughts. And then now she can find him there. And after they go to the drive-in, you see the Violet interrogation from Vera. So Vera's asking about, like, you know, so somebody saw you at Liz's house, like, and, you know, somebody saw you at Liz's house, right? Like, with her school books and all that. And Violet's just talking about, like, you know, well, Liz and I never really officially met, but we had a class together, you know, and I sat behind her and I would just look at these cluster of beauty marks on the back of her neck, and I would just make little shapes and little figures with them, you know, and I just imagine them. And you start to see that, like, maybe Fern was just either obsessed with or really infatuated with Liz, you know, and she was, you know, showed her kindness, if anything, you know, and that meant something to Violet, to Fern, you know. But then Fern's just like, listen, she was nice, I did her a favor, can I go now? And then she has a bad dream where she's like, you just see different shots from the movie, I guess. But then she wakes up in like a terror and she's just like, oh my God. But you start to see that Violet is starting to feel a little bit about this as well. Yeah, you're starting to see that, like, this is getting to her a little bit. She's having to deal with whatever she's dealing with. So then the next scene we have is the Courtney interrogation, I guess you could call it, or Courtney and Vera. So Courtney goes to Vera Cruz and says, you know, I don't know how to say this, but, you know, Liz had a craving for men and for sex. And she would, you know, hook up with men when, you know, her parents were out of town and all. Also, by the way, like, whose parents are going out of town that much? But anyway, that's besides the point. But you just see that going on, and she's building this case of, like, well, you know, my friend was like this, and I respected that, though, and I didn't want to tell anybody else. But she's pretty much trying to make it so that, you know, what she ends up having done kind of then makes sense. But you have this scene, and then you have what I lovingly refer to as the Violet bad bitch montage, which is pretty much, you start to see that Violet is just getting a little big for her britches. So you see that, like, you know, Violet gets a car from somebody for making out with them, and that people around the school are like, you know, they're, you know, like, people are finding out, like, who is this girl and what is she and all this. And, you know, this is where Zach first meets Violet, because she's the star of the school play. She's head cheerleader and all that. And I just love her bad bitch montage, though. It's kind of great because it's showing that her confidence is, you know, slowly and surely climbing. She's really feeling herself now, and that's going to prove to be her downfall in a way. But a little bit about that part of the movie. So we have, this is kind of a fun little thing. So Courtney's wardrobe for meeting Vera is her trying to seem more innocent because she's way more covered up than she normally was, which I just thought was really interesting. But when Violet gets the red car and she drives to school, so you'll notice that, like, you never see the back of the car. And that is because Judy Greer didn't know how to drive a stick shift, and that car was a stick shift. And pretty much guys from the transportation team of the movie had to push the car anytime that it looked like she was driving it, which I thought was really funny because I'm just like, okay, like, you have these guys just pushing your car now. It's just really fun. But then you see the drive-in that Julie and Zach go to. It was in Culver City, California, but it's probably no longer there. But the next scene you have is Zach and Julie go to the drive-in, and Zach is like, do you know a girl named Violet? Then she's just cast in the school play, but it's weird because she told me she saw me in Grease twice and that I rocked her world. It just doesn't make sense to me. And then Julie's like, well, do you know a girl named Fern? Like, she's a little geeky girl. She does little errands for Miss Sherwood. And she pretty much tells Zach all what happened with Liz Purr, what happened with Fern, and all this. And Zach's like, well, you have to do something about it, you know? And she's like, I know, but, like, you know, it's my word against Courtney's, you know? And then you see a scene with Courtney and Violet. So Courtney's like, all right, you know, my plan is working. Like, Julie's gonna, you know, not have Zach anymore and all of that. But then Marcy's like, you know, I think Violet's totally out of control. Like, the parking space she got, the car, just everything. I think she's out of control. And you then see Violet outside of the school, just like writhing on the top of her car, like on her hood. And it's just so funny and hilarious. And Courtney just pulls her in and pulls her into the school and pulls her in the bathroom and knocks her up against this mirror and is like, what the fuck are you doing? And it's this whole scene of like, you know, listen, bitch, like, I'm just as strong as you are, and I know what really happened, and I can say anything. And it's such a good scene because then, like, Violet, like, is smoking a cigarette, and, like, then she blows smoke into Courtney's face, and Courtney's just like, no, we're not doing this. I made you, and I can break you just as easily. And it's just a beautiful confrontation scene, because it just shows that, like, Fern really is feeling herself, and she's getting even bigger than Courtney. And then this is the catalyst for Courtney to try to bring Violet down, which we'll get to in a minute. So Violet writhing on her hood of her car is absolutely a reference to Angeline. And if you don't know who Angeline is, there is a Peacock original series with Emmy Rossum where you can watch it if you have that, where you can learn. But pretty much Angeline was a model in the 80s who literally, I think, bought her own billboard. She wasn't really famous for anything in particular. She wasn't your traditional celebrity. She was just kind of famous for being famous. But she was known for having like a pink Corvette. And, you know, look up Angeline for sure. I think it'd be a fun time. And the Courtney and Violet bathroom scene, I think is just so good. It was all done in one shot. Rose McGowan did not know that Judy Greer was going to blow smoke in her face. And so when she takes the cigarette out of her hand and throws it, that was because Courtney was just pissed about it and Rose was pissed. She didn't know. And it was actually, so Courtney then wipes Marcy's lipstick, and apparently that was inspired by Missy Pyle, who did an audition for this early draft of the movie, who, by the way, if you don't know who Missy Pyle is, I know her just because I watched the movie a couple days ago, but she was in Josie and the Pussycats. She played a character in that, and I absolutely could see her in this movie somewhere. I think it would be hilarious, but she apparently auditioned for Courtney in an early draft of this, but it was inspired by her. which was kind of cool. And I was like, oh, all right, that makes sense. So then we're coming up near the end of the movie. So Julie and Zach, they decide to go back and see, like, all right, like, well, what proof do we have? What evidence do we have? And Julie remembers that Courtney took a photo of Liz, and the photo might still be, at that diner, right? And they end up going, they don't find anything, even though the photo is actually just in the gutter. They just didn't look hard enough. And then they do try to go to Vera Cruz to confess. And then pretty much Vera's like, well, we already have a suspect in custody. We already, saw this. I guess I'll talk a little bit about that in just a bit. But Julie then is like, well, what happened? Except maybe somebody went back to the scene of the crime and, and did something. And she then puts it all together that, like, oh God, Courtney went back, had sex with some guy to make it look like Liz was raped and murdered. And now she's just like, all right, we got to do something about this. Like, we gotta bring this bitch down. Right. So then the next scene you see is that, Violet comes to school and she sees all these posters. It says, "Who is Violet?" with a picture of Fern Mayo on it. And people realize that, like, that's actually Fern under that Violet drag, pretty much. She goes to the nurse's office where she gets a bandaged head wound, I guess. And she is pretty much made to be this, she's this failure, and it's so sad. Because all she wanted was just to be sort of popular and not just be, mousy little Fern Mayo. So then, Julie and Zach come to school. They see this whole thing. It's like, oh God, this is so horrible. And then they confront Courtney and Marcy. And Julie's like, what did you do, Courtney? What have you done? Like, you ruined some guy's life, and Courtney says, life's a bitch, then you die. And then Julie's just like, no, honey, you're the bitch. And then you start to see that, like, this is all just, coming to an end. It's coming to a crumble. So a little bit of information about that is actually Darren Stein has, like, a copy of the Who is Violet poster, and he just has, like, a poster of it in his house, which honestly I would too. The particular scene with Violet where people are just, like, making fun of her, yelling at her in the hallway, making fun of her, that is absolutely, like, a nightmare sequence, and also very much like the Plug It Up scene from Carrie. I definitely got vibes of that a little bit. And then what else? I believe also with the confrontation of Julie and Courtney and all them. First off, I think it's funny when Courtney's like, look, Mars, it's like Terms of Endearment Part 3, only this time the boyfriend's gay. Yeah, and the rest of the cast sucks. Which is funny because I think apparently Darren Stein really likes Terms of Endearment, so it's kind of funny that he put that in there. And then also you notice that, like, Rose McGowan doesn't really deliver the line, life's a bitch, then you die, very convincingly, because she didn't really want to say it, but it kind of helps as well with the scene. So then the next scene you have is the beginning of prom, where people are coming over to prom. You have the scene where Zach, Julie, and Fern are all driving in Zach's car. She needs to pay for what she did. And you have the little, like, oh, well, great, Zach, like, let's, on our way going to prom, like, let's stop by and get some pig's blood or whatever. But you start seeing this prom. You see the Donnas are the entertainment, which is awesome and wonderful. And you just see this prom scene, and then you see a scene with Rebecca Gayheart in her room. I like that she's playing with, like, this weird, like, toy, and she throws it. But her mom actually had some stuff from Miss Purr, came over and gave some stuff of Liz's, and she finds this greeting card. And the greeting card from the beginning is pretty much, you find out that Courtney accidentally recorded herself saying, I killed Liz, I killed the teen dream, deal with it. And she's like, oh God, this is the evidence we need. Oh good, thank God. And so then her and Julie and Fern So Julian, Fern, and Zach all show up at prom. And they come in, and of course they're getting made fun of by some of the popular girls, you know, getting some lesbian slurs thrown at them a little bit. And then you have Courtney, who's like, excuse me, like, I think there's a certain announcement that has to be made. Like, I'm prom queen, duh. And then you see Julie and Fern sitting together. And then you see Miss Sherwood going up on stage and announcing who is the king and queen of prom. While all the while Zach goes backstage and is trying to solder this greeting card to the like audio system or whatever, because he's in theater and he can do that, to make it so that everyone can hear what this greeting card has to say. And so then you find out that the prom king and queen are Dane Saunders and Courtney Shane. So Courtney goes up, and, you know, it's very much like a Carrie type of scene in a weird way. You see that, you know, Courtney is now the prom queen, and then the greeting card ends up getting revealed, and then everyone at the prom sees that Courtney was actually the one who killed Liz. She was the one who caused Liz's death, and it's her downfall. And so Dane seems like really hurt, and, you know, he gives the little like scepter back to Courtney, and then people are like outraged, and they're like, oh my god, that bitch, like, how dare you, that's horrible. And they're all yelling and jeering at her and throwing corsages at her, which is great. And then she's just like going down the middle of this like mob of people. And then at the end of this line, while Bing Crosby's Young at Heart is playing overhead, you see Julie at the end of this line, and then Courtney's just like, Julie, she's like crying, and then all Julie just says is, smile pretty, Courtney, and she gets a photo of her, which then goes into the yearbook. So I'm trying to think if there's any fun kind of facts of like the end of this movie. Pretty much this is a whole like Carrie homage, if you will, of course, obviously. Trying to see what else there is. The Donnas were, it was kind of a slight homage to Heathers, because each one of the members of the Donnas is not actually named Donna, but they go by Donna, which is kind of like Heathers a little bit. That's really funny to me. Also, for the shot where Courtney is like being thrown corsages at and all that, it's very much like a Spike Lee movie, kind of like Girl 6 a little bit, where like they just kind of attached Courtney to like a dolly or something, and like they just have her like going on this camera dolly where it just looks like she's floating, which is really weird, but very much like a Spike Lee type movie. But it's very much like the pig's blood scene in Carrie or any of these things. And then that's how the movie ends, pretty much. And so, I mean, this film to me is just such a fun and campy time. I really enjoy it and love it. I think it got unfairly compared to Heathers, even though, yeah, you know, they both take place in high school. They're both kind of acerbic and, you know, bitchy in their dialogue. But really, I think Jawbreaker was a whole different story than Heathers. You know, it's very much about, it's about these girls, you know, it's about the inner workings of this girl clique. And, you know, if anything, like, yeah, the movie has influence from Heathers, but also we're talking like, you know, Frankenstein, we're talking, you know, girl gang movies from the 50s, we're talking Russ Meyer movies, Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, and like Beyond the Valley of the Dolls and stuff, which is then really funny because Beyond the Valley of the Dolls was written by Roger Ebert, and he gave like a horrible review for this movie, which still kind of makes Darren Stein a little bit mad, I think, or at least at the time of one of the articles I read, he was like, yeah, that's weird because like this guy literally wrote such an amoral movie, but like he's talking about my movie and how horrible it was. So anyway, but that is it for Jawbreaker. I love this movie so much. I think you should watch it if you haven't already done so. Know that it's going to be a movie where you don't want to ask a whole lot of questions because you're probably not going to get many answers from it, but I really do appreciate and enjoy it. And I hope you will too. But now we're going to wrap up and end the show. So As always, you can send me an email at cultcinemacircle@gmail.com in case you wanted to give any movie recommendations, give feedback on the show, or just say, hey girl, hey. I'm totally open to all of it. You can also follow the show, Cult Cinema Circle, on Instagram and Twitter. Instagram handle is Cult Cinema Circle, and then Twitter handle is Cult Cine Circle. And then I also have a Letterboxd, if you want to follow me on Letterboxd, at Jesse, Jesse, Kremp, Kremp. And I'll have all the social media links on a Linktree link in the show notes of this episode. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcatcher of choice. And just remember, I killed Liz. I killed the teen dream. Deal with it.